Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Legal Talk. I'm your host, John Mitchell, and I am so happy. I'm pleased. I'm overflowing with joy to have everybody out there in the audience be with us. Hope you had a wonderful little commercial break. Opportunity, get up, stretch your legs, have the hot or cold beverage of your choice, as the case may be. And now you're going to be, strapped in and ready for some excellent, excellent information. I have got such a treat for you today. Now, I looked this up. I like to know things. I like to learn things. And so, the other day I ran across a quote, and this was a quote by Lucius Calpurnius way back in the day, who was apparently father-in-law to Julius Caesar. And he said once, "Fiat justitia rot caelum," which means let justice be done though the heavens fall. So we are all part of a big system of justice. We are so fortunate to have that system because, the alternative to that is chaos, and nobody wants chaos. So I have with me immigration attorney extraordinaire. So pleased and privileged to have with us Ingrid Perez, and she is going to bring us some good information about green cards and employers and all that good stuff. So, Ingrid, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us again.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, so listen, excuse all this smoke around me because there's a burning question, right? It's a smoke because burning question, right? You get it? So see what I did there. So so anyway, sorry about the corny jokes. It's Friday, right? So let me ask you this question, right? Green card process for SME employees, right? What is the process for sponsoring a green card for an employee? If a company wants to get a green card for the employee, what do you have to do?
All right, well, I'll be more than happy to answer and get ready for this, possibly long-winded explanation, but I'll try to make it as brief as possible. So, it's important to sort of understand that the law is written in a way to protect American workers, right? So that is the frame of mind that we're working through this process. So the first step of an employer is usually defining the job description, the job duties, right? And the minimum requirements for the position that is normal for the industry. So for example, if I'm looking to hire an accountant, right? What is the minimum required for this accountant to enter the profession? So perhaps a bachelor's degree, maybe the employer, requires a year of experience. So if it's an entry-level position, maybe 0 years of experience. And does this person maybe need, a license to practice the profession? The question is, what is the minimum required for this specific position? And the employer can have, different requirements depending on the nature of that particular job being offered to the foreign national. So that's step number one. Once we have that step defined, what we're going to do is request a prevailing wage determination from the Department of Labor. We want to know from the Department of Labor, what is the minimum salary that this employer needs to pay the foreign employee? And the reason, again, to do that is because we want to protect American workers. The law does not want to incentivize companies to hire foreign nationals and pay them a lesser wage than you would otherwise pay an American employee. So that's step number one. Once that step is completed, the employer has to go through a good faith recruitment process. And depending on whether this job is for a unskilled person or an unskilled position or a skilled position or a professional position, depending on the minimum requirements, there are different recruiting steps per the statute, right? So sometimes it's putting the job on a newspaper ad, a radio ad, posting it at the job site, things like that. And we have a statutory period where we have to do this recruitment. If during that recruitment, the employer does not find the American employee who is ready, willing, and capable of doing this position, then we can proceed to asking the Department of Labor to certify, when we call that the PERM labor certification. It's a certification done by the Department of Labor that basically says, okay, employer, you've gone through all the steps of finding the U.S. employee and you cannot find them, and therefore we're certifying that your efforts were true, and you can proceed with this labor certification and now file an immigrant petition for the employee. So the first half of the process is all done with the Department of Labor. The second step of the process is now done with immigration. With that approved labor or that certified labor certification, the employer can go to immigration and file for the immigrant visa petition for that employee. So it's a very sort of complicated, long process, but that's basically how it works. There are other instances where you may bypass the labor certification, but for the most part, you have to go through the labor certification process with the Department of Labor.
All right. Well, that is excellent information. That's a good place to get us started. So you know that you got to, it's complicated. You're going to deal with more than one government agency, and that's why it's so important, folks out there. If you're listening, paying attention, right? Why it's so important that you deal with somebody that knows what they're doing, right? Like Ingrid does. So, been there, done that, not first rodeo, all the good old cliches. And that's why it's important to have somebody that knows, right? So now, I don't know about you, Ingrid, but one of the first questions that always comes about when I've got a new potential new client sitting across from me, and one of the first things they always ask, how long is this process going to take? Everybody, they have two questions, and this is the first one. How long does this take? So, okay, what can you tell us about that?
This process is going to take a long time. The Department of Labor is slow, it's bureaucratic, it's extremely backlogged. So, my recent experience with the Department of Labor is that the entire perm process has been taking at least a year. And that is, crazy considering employers really do need the employees here in the United States. And then the immigration part of it, right, can take you at least maybe another year, a year and a half, maybe more, depending on the employee's nationality, depending on whether the person is doing a job that requires a bachelor's degree or a non-bachelor degree position. It just depends on so many things. It depends on whether the visa bulletin is current for that specific visa category. So I would say be ready to, wait at least a year and a half, 2 years until this green card is in that employee's hand. And, for the employer, it's important to also be mindful of maybe other non-immigrant visa options that the employee can have here in the United States while they're waiting for their immigrant visa process to go through.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. So there you can maybe do a little 1-2 punch there, So maybe get them in a different category and then switch to something better later on. And you're the one that knows all about all that good stuff. Now, here's the other thing. So, by the way, I tell people this all the time, right? Don't, it's going to take a while. Don't watch the clock, watch the calendar, right? That's what I tell people. So, take your big patience pill and wait because it's going to take a while, but we'll get there for you. Now, the other big question, and you know what's coming, right? The other big question people always ask when they're getting started with a new process, what are going to be the costs associated? I'm going to whip out my checkbook. How bad is the damage going to be? How bad am I going to be hurting?
Well, I think, each attorney may charge a different, fee for their services, but at least with the Department of Labor, there are no government fees associated with the labor certification process, which is really nice. But there are other costs that the employer is required by law to pay. So the employer is by law required to pay the attorney's fees. The employer by law is required to pay costs associated with recruiting, right? And depending on where you are in the United States and the newspaper that you have to post this job ad it may be a little bit of money to recruit, maybe $1,000 or a couple of $1,000s to, in recruitment costs. And then once we proceed with the immigrant visa petition with the immigration services, the fees actually just went up. So the fee to file the petition right now, as of April 1st, 2024, went up to $715. And there's also an additional fee that employers have to also pay. If you have 25 or less employees, you have to pay an additional $300 fee. If you have 25 or more employees, you have to pay a $600 fee. And this extra fee is meant to support the asylum applicants. There's a lot of news around asylum and the backlog. So this extra fee is meant to make that asylum process a little bit better, a little bit more streamlined.
Right, great. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about price, a little bit about time, and a little bit about the process. And I can't stress this enough. Don't go down to some street corner notario that you found at the flea market or whatever. Hire people that are competent professionals, know what they're doing, and can walk you through this seamlessly, right? That would be, I guess, my number one piece of advice to folks out there. Ingrid, why don't you go ahead and tell us? We'll do the call to action, right? Call Ingrid. That's the call to action today. So if people want to get in touch with you, Ingrid, they want to hire a good immigration attorney, how do they go about doing that?
I think the easiest way is to visit my website, www.ibplaw.com. Is just my initials, Ingrid Borges Perez Law.com, and you can get in touch with me there through email, through the phone, text message, whatever is easiest.
Excellent. Well, I recommend everybody out there go ahead and do that. You know, contact you through your website. Ingrid, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. We really appreciate you being on the show with us, and that will do it. I'm going to throw it back to commercials so that people out there can, go stretch their legs again if they need to, whatever it may be. But we are going to be back with more legal talk right after these next break.